Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Loving obeisances unto the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is all there is. Janmadyasya yato anvayadi taratascha artheshu abhigyaswarat tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yat surayah tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra sargo mrisha dhamna swena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. We meditate upon the transcendent absolute being from whom springs forth this universe. He is present in all that exists and yet distinct from everything. He is fully conscious and totally independent. He revealed to the first seer Brahma the import of Vedic wisdom. The material creation made of threefold gunas appears in him as though real, like water in a mirage. Being eternally self effulgent, he is ever free of the illusion Maya of the material world. We meditate upon him, the Supreme Being. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amritadrava sanyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O devotees who relish a taste for divine love, Bhagavatam is the fully ripened fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Vedas, flowing as immortal nectar from Shuka Brahma Rishi. Go on drinking this nectar day after day. So now we are entering the 10th chapter of Bhagavatam. We are looking at the manifestation of creation by Brahma. We saw Brahma do tapas and then get a beautiful vision of the form of Supreme Being, Sri Hari, and then offer a wonderful prayer which also has the highest teaching that is applicable for everyone about the fact, the truth that Bhagavan alone is and everything happens only by his will through his Maya, and therefore Brahma expresses this total surrender to Bhagavan and prays to him to be blessed with the right potencies necessary to embark on creation, and he is blessed thus, and then Bhagavan disappears from his view. And now we continue. Vidura asks the question now. Vidura is listening to Maitreya narrate this whole dialogue, and therefore Vidura asks Maitreya, after the Lord had disappeared from the view of Brahma, what did Brahma do? How many species he created? And what is the way in which he embarked on this whole process? And Maitreya responds by saying, Brahma, having performed great penance, austere penance, and having fixed his mind entirely on the Supreme Being, now was ready to embark on this enterprise of creation, this whole lila of Bhagavan manifesting through him, fully aware that he is only the instrument through which this creation is happening and it's only the doing of the Supreme Being. He went about the creation. He had the right knowledge, wisdom, and the creative power. It's called Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti because he is endowed with the wisdom by being fully surrendered. Therefore, he has the right potency to act, the Kriya Shakti, the creative power. And with the creative power being greatly enhanced by his penance, he was able to overcome all challenges as he embarked on creation. It is said that there was a lot of disturbance that he had to face, and all of these are very symbolic or symptomatic of every act of creation that everyone does. When we go about creation, go about doing anything for that matter, because every act brings forth something and therefore is a small act of creation. And when we embark on creation, the first thing to do is what Brahma shows the example of by praying to the Supreme Being. And the prayer is only total surrender, to surrender that Bhagavan alone is, and all that happens only through his will and his energy, and we are only the instrument, and thereby getting the right wisdom and the right attitude that I am not the doer, but I am only the instrument. So, this is the attitude with which we have to act and do any creative act, or for that matter, any act. And that's what Brahma shows here. And also, just as Brahma is facing disturbances, this is true for all of us too. Anytime we embark on any activity, there is always disturbance, and the disturbance is directly proportional to the scope of the activity. The greater the scope, the greater the disturbance, because there is the material energy that is always seemingly acting as an obstacle, as we have mentioned before too. The Maya of the Supreme Being has both Mahamaya, which is of the nature of delusion and creating bewilderment and confusion, and there is the Yoga Maya, which is the divine potency or grace, which enables the right action. So, when we engage in activity, if we are caught in Mahamaya, we are faced with a lot of obstacles, and we are also having the sense of I and mine by which the activities bind us. When we surrender completely, then we are in the ambit of grace in Yoga Maya, and any disturbance that comes forth can be overcome. And that's what Brahma represents here. He is able to overcome all disturbances, and he is able to start on the activity of creation. He first, it is said, creates three worlds, which is called Bhur Bhuvaswaha. It is part of the Gayatri Mantra too. These three worlds represent the three regions, and it also represents three realms of consciousness, Bhur Bhuvaswaha. And then there are four higher realms after that, which are called as Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satyam. So these are also referred to in the full Gayatri Mantra. So Brahma is known to have manifested all these worlds, and each world or each realm of consciousness has different characteristics. The earth being the Bhuloka, which is the primary focus as far as creation of animate and inanimate beings go. So, having described this, Vidura now asks, please tell me specifically about time. So, this is a very important question Vidura is asking. And Maitreya described overall the attitude of Brahma, his being situated in wisdom, and his ability to create the three worlds. Vidura stops and asks, tell me about time, because this potency called time is what makes everything appear as I understand it. And Maitreya is very glad. He says, yes, indeed, time is what is the main instrument by which this whole lila happens. So, if we notice in our own lives, when we are in deep sleep, there is no sense of time. Time is completely stopped, and we have no activity either. There is no perception of any world, there is no perception of even an individual. There is absolutely nothing, but simply the seed of everything is carried there, and therefore it is called the causal state. The deep sleep state is called as karana, or the causal state. And when we wake up from the deep sleep, the first thing that rises is the mind, and then the I thought, and from the I thought, all the elements are manifested, and then based on that, the whole creation comes forth in our own relative way every morning. And this is at the cosmic level the exact same process. So, time is completely non existent during dissolution, but time is an infinite cycle, just as time continues from day after day. When we go to sleep, time stops completely, and then the next morning, time continues from where it left off the previous day. Similarly, during dissolution, the cosmic dissolution, time is completely stopped as well, but it contains the seed. The dissolution contains the seed of time from previous kalpas, and also the tendencies of the jivas from the previous kalpa, just as we wake up with the same tendencies from where we went to sleep. Similarly, at the cosmic level, the universal supreme being, when there is the cosmic dissolution that happens in the supreme being, all the latent tendencies of the jiva and time itself are stored in a causal form, and then the next day of the cosmic being, as it were, which is the next cycle of creation, everything comes into life as it does for us in our own small way, day after day. So this is the nature of time, that time manifests creation. Time is infinite because it continues from kalpa to kalpa, that is, from one cycle of creation to another. And between cycles of creation, time remains in the unmanifest form, in a causal state, and so does the latent tendencies of all the beings from the previous cycle of creation. Therefore, Maitreya explains all this beautifully and says, time has no beginning and no end, and it is the instrument of the Supreme Being, and the Lord manifests this whole universe like a sport, like a lila, through this instrument of time. And therefore, we can see that time is also the root of suffering as well. Because when we engage in any kind of comparison, when we engage in anything that results in resistance, that is because of time. When we completely accept the now, then we are free of time. But when we resist the now, then we go back to the past, we go forward into the future, we either regret the past or we project some imaginary state in the future, we compare with the future or we compare with the past, and in all these ways we resist the now, and thereby we create suffering and misery. But when we completely accept the now, then there is no time and therefore there is no suffering. So, time is the way in which the lila of Maya comes forth, which is to say, the cycle of suffering that is part of Maya, in which all the jivas are bound, is through the primary instrument of time. That's why Maitreya says time is the main instrument through which this Maya manifests, and when the Maya is dissolved, the whole universe exists in the causal form, and time itself remains in the causal form. But when the universe again comes forth, time comes forth and disturbs the gunas, and thereby the whole creation sets forth. So Maitreya then describes that creation is tenfold, because Brahma's creation is what we are talking about, but before that, there is also the primary creation of the Supreme Being, as we have already seen. That's why Bhagavatam calls it Sarga and Visarga. Sarga is the primary creation, which we have seen multiple times how the cosmic being comes forth, and he is again listing that as 6 steps. The very first step is the Mahat, which is the cosmic mind. When the gunas are disturbed by time, and time comes forth and disturbs the equilibrium of the 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, then comes the cosmic mind, which is Mahat. That's the first creation. The second creation is then from the cosmic mind comes the cosmic I thought. Just as we wake up and our mind wakes up and our I thought comes forth, at the cosmic level, there is the cosmic I thought that comes forth from the cosmic mind. That's the second creation. The third creation is the evolution of the gross elements, which are in the order space, air, fire, water, and earth. And then the fourth is the senses which can perceive these elements, which are ears or sound, touch, which is skin, light, which is eyes, taste, which is tongue, and smell, which is the nose. So these 5 senses come forth. That is the fourth creation. The fifth is the deities that preside over these senses and elements. So there are various deities, and the elements of nature, such as sun presides over light, wind presides over air, and so on. So these various deities are the elements of nature that preside over these elements and preside over the senses that perceive these elements. That's the fifth creation. And the sixth creation is the principle of I and mine, that is the ego, the individual ego that the jiva is bound by. So these six are created by the Supreme Being. This is called the primary creation or sarga. Then comes visarga, which is the secondary creation of Brahma. So when all these are already there, so these are all not created by Brahma. The cosmic mind, the cosmic I thought, the gross elements, the senses, the deities that preside over the senses, and the latent tendencies of the jivas coming forth as I and mine. All these are already there, created by the Supreme Being as part of the cosmic form, the Virat Rupa, the Vishwarupa. And in that is also evolved Brahma, the first created being. And then Brahma goes about his creation, which itself is a pastime of the Lord, because the point that is again and again repeated is even the subsequent creation by Brahma is also essentially the creation of the Supreme Being, simply using Brahma as the instrument. Therefore, when we look at this, if we simply remember that everything is Lord's creation, then that itself rids us of all sorrows and all unnecessary confusion. So now, the subsequent creation is threefold after that. So we have seen the sixfold creation, the primary creation, sarga of the Supreme Being. Then the secondary creation is threefold. First, which is called as the seventh, is called the creation of all the immobile creatures. So apart from rocks and trees and plants and so on, there is also the various botanical creatures. So it is in fact described here as trees that bear fruit without flowering, plants and herbs that die every year, creepers that grow on the ground, plants that have a hard bark, trees which bear fruit. So all these various things which are immobile are the seventh creation. The eighth creation is animals, that is, those beings which can move other than humans. They are living beings, it is said, that draw their nutrition horizontally. So, the unique thing about humans is we take the nutrition from top down, all the animals take them horizontally, and they are said to be of 28 varieties, and they are listed. And the main quality of all these animal beings is that they have no sense of time. So they are blissfully unaware of time. So, in that sense, they are free because humans uniquely are aware of time, and therefore, as we said, we are able to go into the past and the future, compare, and create suffering. This particular problem is not there for animals, but at the same time, they are also irrational and they only are guided by their sense of smell, and they cannot take a long view of things. They do not have any discriminating ability, so therefore they are simply at the level of eating, sleeping, mating, and just surviving. So the animals, on the one hand, they are free of time and therefore free of psychological suffering, unlike humans. On the other hand, unlike humans, they don't have discriminating faculty, they don't have ability to self reflect and self inquire and recognize the Supreme Being, and therefore they are simply going through the cycle of eating, sleeping, mating, and surviving. And they are of different varieties, and all these are listed. There is the beasts which have split hoofs, those are like cows and sheep and camel and buffaloes and goats and so on. And then there are animals which have a single whole hoof, such as there is given donkeys and horses and yak and so many other animals listed here. And then there are those which have five claws, kind of like humans, but they have five nails, which are dogs and wolf and jackals and tigers and lions and monkeys and elephant and tortoise and all the rest. Then there are birds, all kinds of birds like the heron, the vulture, the hawk, the peacock. So many birds are listed here. So all of these form the eighth creation. That is the animals, the wild ones, the domesticated ones, the birds, the insects, all of them, anything that moves. And then the ninth creation is, of course, the human species. These are the ones which take nutrition downwards. And the humans are characterized by an abundance of rajas. So, of the three gunas, sattva, tamas, and rajas, humans are specifically high on rajas, that is the sense of activity. That is why we see that humans are able to create many things that nobody else, no other species can do in terms of science and technology and art and culture and so on, because human beings have an abundance of rajas, the principle of activity, and they are active by nature. And humans are also, therefore, prone to derive pleasure from the senses, which causes them to create a lot of suffering. But at the same time, humans are also capable of transcending into sattva, the mode of goodness, and transcending even past that by recognizing and surrendering to the Supreme Being. So, this is the ninth creation. And then he says that these three creations, that is the last three, which are the immobile creatures, trees, plants, herbs, and so on, the mobile animals, and the humans, these are primarily the creation of Brahma. Everything before that, in terms of the elements and the natural deities that preside the elements, and even the latent tendencies, everything is already there. Brahma doesn't create any of that. All he creates is the physical bodies and the physical forms of both inanimate and animate beings, immobile, mobile, and humans. And then there is the 10th category, which is called the heavenly beings, and these are said to be created both by Brahma and directly by the Supreme Being's intervention. And these are various beings such as the Gandharvas, Apsaras, Yakshas, Siddhas, Vidyadharas, and so on. What is important to notice here is these are all, of course, words that some may be aware of. Gandharvas refer to celestial musicians, Apsaras refers to celestial dancing girls, Siddhas refers to heavenly beings with supernatural powers, and so on. What is interesting to notice here is today there is a lot of awareness of aliens in science. There is, it was originally considered to be a conspiracy, but there is increasing evidence that there are aliens, and there is also various reports coming out that there are sightings of aliens and so on. Nobody knows for sure, but it is very entirely likely. So these can be easily dismissed based on the knowledge that people have only till today. But it's important to recognize that the knowledge we have is very limited. We don't know what other beings are there in this universe. And the very fact that there is so much reports of aliens in the universe perhaps is a reference to these kinds of other beings who are of significantly higher order of intelligence than humans. And in fact, we do see many evidence of that. There are so many mysteries in our own world of various structures like the pyramids and so on, which science says is practically impossible to build even using today's technology, let alone being built thousands of years ago. And therefore, there is every possibility that there are higher order intelligence beings in the universe who are not perceptible to our senses. And that's what the Vedas declare when it says that there are celestial beings with different capabilities, whether it's architecture or music or supernatural powers and so on, and they are all given particular names. So that's the 10th category of beings who are heavenly and of much higher order of intelligence. So these are the 10 creations that are listed as the essence of Sarga and Visarga, that is creation and subcreation. Having listed all this, Maitreya says, now that I have given you the entire scope of creation, next I shall talk to you about the various time periods. Because within creation there are many time periods called manvantaras, which is characterized by Manu. So every significant time period has a significant first created man called Manu, and this Manu is the primary first human from whom the particular period or manvantara goes forth, and therefore Maitreya here says that I will next talk about the various Manus and the Manvantaras, and that will be the content of the next chapter. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.